Well, hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Derek Strauss with Gavroshe, and we're partnering with the CDO Magazine and MIT CDO IQ Symposium and the International Society for Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Ramesh Shurma. Ramesh is the CEO at Orion Governance. Ramesh, welcome.
Thank you, Derek. It's a privilege and an honor to be here.
So, Ramesh, today we're going to be talking about the challenges of making sound and trustworthy decisions, which I'm sure is a topic that's very close to the heart of so many people in the data and analytics space. If we go back to the way things always were before the 1980s, it was everyone in the boardroom listened to the highest paid person's opinion. There was that fascinating article that was written in the Harvard Business Review way back when about the HIPPOs, the HIPPO, the highest paid person's opinion. And decisions were made by gut feel, in those days. But of course, business has become faster and faster and more things happening that people have to take into account. So people have been forced to really figure this one out. And many organizations, they're really not there yet. So it's a great topic for us to be talking about. But before we dive in, maybe, Ramesh, you could give us a quick background on yourself and your company.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. So I founded Orion back in 2017. Prior to that, had many years of working in the data movement and analytics space for very large companies. And believe it or not, while it was always deep down in the weeds, in the forest, so barely got to see the trees. And it so happened that I was involved in a migration project where I really got to see the forest. And to get a little less abstract, a very successful company that was trying to migrate away from a legacy system. And I was asked to lead that migration effort. And it turned out I was a little surprised that nobody within the enterprise had a clear understanding of the flow of information. And the reason why this was very important to me is I was given 10 months to help migrate this. And the fact that there was not a single body in the enterprise that understood the flow of information was very alarming. And how could successful enterprises have such a big challenge? And that was like an aha moment in my head. And what we had to do was get a bunch of consultants to go and interview people. And I said, there's got to be something better than this. And that's how really this idea behind Orion Governance today started. We set off building a product that had to be automated, that had to be transparent, and velocity was very important, especially when you're given less than 10 months to migrate a core system. You can't take a year or 2 years to come back with a solution. That would be absolutely destructive for the enterprise. And that's really how we embarked on this very exciting journey.
Very interesting background. Yeah. And, you and the leadership of your company, you meet with a lot of chief data officers, and in your conversations with them, I'm sure you hear a whole lot about what are their big top challenges. One of them, like what you just mentioned, like we got to get off this and migrate, and it's got to be done in 10 months. But there's so many other things that as well that they'll be often talking about. Maybe you could just share with us some of the highlights of some of those conversations that you have.
Yeah, I think being a CDO is a thankless job. Nobody appreciates you when things are working right.
Yeah.
But it feels like a lot of stuff is thrown at you. And, one of those elements is the modernization. How do you get systems upgraded, reduce your costs, improve performance, be more compliant at the same time? How can I get it done without bleeding money and without, having a project that has a delayed failure? This is something that's constantly running through their head, and you have all these different silos within the enterprise that need to be tamed. And so an enterprise, in my mind, is really a collection of silos that don't talk to each other.
Yes.
And a CDO's job is really trying to herd these, the cattle together in a way. I don't mean to use the word cattle, but essentially trying to get all these silos to collaborate in a meaningful way that makes sense for the enterprise. And in the world of a pandemic, a lot of the theoretical concepts have been put to test, and I don't know, 70 to 80% of the data science experiments, the models that they've built for risk or for data science, for forecasting, they've all failed. So I think you're living in an era where people are saying, you've spent all this money, now prove that it works. And to have a 70 to 80% failure rate is just not acceptable anymore.
Yeah, yeah, and I like the way you used the herding of cattle. You backed away from it, and as you were backing away from it, I was thinking of even a stronger similarity: herding cats. It's even worse.
Herding cats, yeah.
It's even worse sometimes,
right.
trying to bring them all together. But yeah, I understand exactly where you're coming from on that. So we're in this world where modernization is trying to take place, but at the same time, various aspects are, vectoring in on organizations in terms of, just the regulatory environment, etc., pushing people more and more towards a situation where they have to be able to trace the provenance of data and trying to come up with a good, solid, data strategy that's going to address that is so often, not a trivial thing for the CDO to do. Would you care to kind of comment on some of the major kind of components of, strategy that you're hearing from a lot of people and that you've found actually seem to be the key things that people need to keep their eyes on?
Yeah, so a big part of it is that the reliance on human capital is something that has been called into question thanks to the pandemic, in a way that the fact that you couldn't have people come into the offices and work together. And somebody just told me it's not the technology, it's the people, and there's so much to be said about running an enterprise in a challenging kind of an environment. So without having an automated mechanism to help you discover, understand what's going on within the enterprise, practically everything else fails, because you're reliant on human capital and the challenges faced with post-pandemic, trying to find people. You've heard of these talks and LinkedIn and other forums where they talk about the great resignation. People are retired and they'll let go or leave the job. So what happens? Can you just bring somebody in and replace all that knowledge that existed in the head of someone else? And the only way to crack this problem is really to invest in automation, and not having that as core to all the problems that CDOs face today, be it in application modernization or regulatory compliance, and also trying to get information in near real time, which is absolutely essential in today's world.
Yeah. So, from your perspective then, based on the things that you're seeing people do, obviously automation is one of those key components. And you've mentioned the modernization side of things. We've touched on a little bit around the compliance. But if we just look at automation as the main, one of the three main kind of pillars. What do you see as some of the keys to achieving automation in companies?
Yeah. So it is a very difficult road to go through, right? I mean, so reliance on documentation or the lack thereof it's very subjective. You could end up so one of the talks that I gave recently is I asked a lot of folks in the audience, how many of you use paper maps to navigate from point A to point B, even in your daily commute? And nobody raised their hands. And I think what most of the enterprises are operating out of are essentially paper maps. And the key is really to use the technology that exists within the enterprise, to use technology that can understand that technology and create this map that you need to navigate. Right. So I hope I'm not getting too abstract here, but that is made possible by the kind of investment that we've put in. We call that the road less traveled. Not many companies have taken that approach. Many companies have taken the approach of using a top-down way of addressing this data management issue. But the problem with top-down approaches they are very conceptual, and they are not grounded. It's probably at 50,000 feet propagating an idea, but it's not connected or grounded in reality. In order to accomplish our automation is to try to build that map, knowledge map of what is in your enterprise from the bottom up, from the ground up. And that's really the key. I hope I answered your question here, Derek.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's that understanding of where is your data, and what data do you actually have?
Exactly.
That's absolutely the first step to trying to figure out, what to do with it and how to use it as part of the whole thing of getting sound and trustworthy decisions out. Because quite rightly, as you pointed out, I mean, you've got all these silos of information all over the place, and people very often don't know what's in those silos.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, that makes good sense, Ramesh. And I think what I'd like to suggest is that we close off this first segment at this time and then jump back in on segment 2 and segment 3, where we can look in a bit more depth into modernization and compliance and deal with some of those topics. So I want to just remind the audience that this is a 3-part. So if you come in, you've watched the first piece, be sure to go back onto cdomagazine.tech and look for the second and the third segments, because you want to take in all 3 of them to get the full story. So we'll see you again shortly. We're going to take a short break.